Wesley Crusher shows off his cartwheeling skills. Leotor gets all passive-aggressive, and Data realizes that he does tend to babble. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc, Lofton, and Denise Crosby.
Hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk. Today we're doing a review of The Next Generation Season 1, Episode 7, Justice, story by John D.F. Black and Worley Thorne, teleplay by Worley Thorne, directed by James L. Conway. This was November 9th, 1987. We have a very special guest. What a coincidence. It is director James L. Conway. How's it going, James? Welcome back.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be here again.
Great. Also, very quickly, this entire season was sponsored by our good friend Grandpa One, aka Tim Baum. So thank you to Tim. Let's talk about I had way too much fun watching this episode for the first time in like 25 years. And I kept thinking about Cirroc because I've showed you still frames from this episode for the last 4 years. And when you saw it, Cirroc, was like, this is the one.
I was like, this is that episode with those outfits. Yeah, that was the first thing I thought of. But strangely, but judging just by off the photographs that you've shown me over the years, Ryan, of this still shots of these episodes, I thought it was going to be a lot worse than what it was. I thought I was in for like, oh God, this is going to be just so terribly dated and bad. But actually, I was pleasantly surprised by watching this episode. It was interesting and it was fun to watch, and it kept me engaged. And I feel a lot of gelling happening amongst the cast and just the feel for, the Starfleet feel. It's coming together for me right now.
Yes. So Jamie, can we ask you first and foremost, this was your first Star Trek. This was your directorial debut in Star Trek, right?
It was. At the time, I was directing MacGyver's. And when they were going to start doing Star Trek, they asked me to come and meet with Rick and with Gene and everybody there, which I did. And we all got along. So they signed me up to do 3 the first season. They had script problems throughout the first season, and as it turned out, there was a conflict. They had shut down because of some script problems, and they weren't ready when I was supposed to start prep on my second episode. So I only did 2. I did this episode, and then I did the season finale. But this was my first time, and it was, the show was still finding itself, and the actors were still finding out who the characters were. It was a dream of mine to do this show because I had watched the original series and loved it. And when I heard that they were rebooting Star Trek, I did everything I could to get on the show. So it was thrilling to be there. I have to say, I'm looking at the picture behind you of the actors in their costumes. I was trying to remember if the actors were warned during the
auditions.
If they would be dressed like that. Because can you imagine having a body like some of these guys had and having to walk around looking like that?
Oh, I'm sure the casting was, tailored, knowing that, they're going to be just almost within an inch of their, their equipment. It's like,
running.
I think the better question would be, were we prepared? Were we told that you're going to come down to this planet and this is what everyone's wearing?
And Denise, what did you think when you first had that? When you first saw them in that wardrobe?
I mean, it was just, again, every time I would show up, I never knew what I was going to walk into, It was like my eyes went boing, boing, it's like.
So did Riker's.
Kidding me. You are kidding me. This is what, and they're running. I could barely keep a straight face. I was like, this is, we've gone to Plato's retreat, this is wild.
Did you know that you would be doing softcore on this episode?
Well, I mean, I think the Naked Now gave me an introduction, where this was going. And how about, I mean, I'd forgotten totally about my reaction, not only on the bridge was like, oh, they'll have sex at the drop of any hat.
That was hilarious.
You know, it was like,
yeah,
Tasha Yar's feeling frisky.
Yeah.
By episode 7, you know, she's ready to like, oh yeah, let's do this.
Yeah.
I watched the episode 2 days ago in preparation for this, and I was shocked at how stiff and formal the dialogue and the acting was, because it loosened up dramatically since, you know, over the years. And I think it was everyone just sort of trying to find what the universe of Star Trek was that first season, but everyone was so stiff and formal. And I know there was a rule that you couldn't change any dialogue, and it was very adhered to, especially that first season. Any changes had to be called in. I don't think the actors were wanting to change too much in the beginning. But it surprised me because it became much more colloquial as time went on, and much more the way people act now. But it was definitely stylized in that first season.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Jamie, I wanted to ask you about that, actually. Like, you've gotten to see Star Trek evolve over, 17 or more years, from this episode through Enterprise and the Enterprise pilot, several episodes. And so you've seen this evolution, like you just mentioned, the stiffness kind of goes away. But do you remember the challenges of day one? Like, do you remember, were there script changes going back and forth? Were there discussion of, we want to keep it like the original series, but a little bit different? What can you remember that far back, and what the buzz was, what the challenges were on those first days?
What I remember is the script was way behind, and we had it, and everybody had a lot of problems with the script. And Gene kept promising he would do a rewrite. And literally the day before we were supposed to start shooting, he did a rewrite, but not much changed. Everyone was surprised about how little changed. So it was really the vision that Gene obviously had for this episode. This episode is really quintessential the original series. I mean, it's so in that vein. But there was sort of script chaos that whole first season. And then the last episode I did, the season finale, there was a writer strike. So there was a lot of changes that needed to be made, and none of the actual writers were able to do them because they were all on strike. So it became even more complicated. But anyway, to go back, I remember that one of the reasons they liked my work so much on this episode, which was my first one, is because I'm a very quick director, and I supplied them with lots of coverage. And everybody really appreciated all of the coverage that I did, and still moved the camera and had some style. And I have to say, I really had fun. It was the first time I ever got to direct somebody saying, when they beam me up, energize. The first time I had,
yes.
I forget which actor to say energize was, but it gave me a thrill to have them say that. And also, the other thing that evolved dramatically was the visual effects. This first season of TNG, when we did just a simple green screen, they had to bolt the camera to the ground and had to use a special camera that had 4 pins pulled down instead of 3 pins pulled down, because registration was so incredibly precise. So you were very, very restricted. Having said that, I forgot about the little glowing ball that comes up in front of Brent and that whole thing. And it looked good. I thought the effects held up really well.
Yeah. I thought real quick, as a director's note, I thought what looked really good was when the ball first came in through the corridor and you had all the background extras reacting to it. And I found myself thinking, what did they use back in 87? Was it like a stick and a tennis ball? Or did you just, because I watched them 3 times, they were all extremely coordinated in how they watched where the ball was going. Do you remember that?
I don't remember, because it couldn't have been the stick and the ball, because you can't get rid of them like back then. Right. You could not get rid of it like now. I don't remember what they did, but everybody was looking at the proper place. Brent was looking the same place. Patrick was looking the right place. I was amazed at how, because that's often a giveaway of something that's not well done, because people are looking in all the wrong places. No, I don't know how we did it. I can't remember.
You must have marked it, look at that for, just take them through. Everybody practice it a couple times and, hit those.
Yeah, we
marks.
used to put tape on the walls, things like that. So everyone would look in the same place.
Right. That's what I recall.
We also got some really good shots of the water treatment facility, the planet.
Yes.
I felt like I was really somewhere exotic, and you captured it well without revealing, city landscapes in the background or whatnot. What were the challenges there?
That location was amazing. That I actually, that's a Pullman Basin, and I go there to take photos a lot because they have a couple of lakes there with a lot of birds, and it's very pretty. And I was just there about 3 weeks ago.
I live about a half a mile away from there, and Cirroc and I were just there last year. It's a good time.
I didn't realize that what it looked like until we scouted that location, and it was just so perfect with the fountains and the that big 21st century looking building. It was a great location. And then the other half was shot at Huntington Libraries at the gardens there, which I belong to. I live in Pasadena, and it's just 10 minutes from me. And I go there all the time to walk. And I go back, walk by the spots where we shot. That's where he fell into the equipment and that whole sequence.
I wanted to ask that, because that was clearly not the Japanese garden there.
Yeah,
that was definitely not
the same thing.
Right. That was there. And it was also rare for Star Trek to go out in the first place. I mean, that was a very stage-bound show.
Totally. I mean, I can't remember. I mean, that may be the only time I think I went out somewhere. I don't know. We'll see. I'm not, this has been so much fun for me doing this little walk through my past with these guys, because I'm not remembering any of them, And so, but it was like we were like kids in a candy store. We're outside. We're outside. We're not on the lot.
Fresh air, birds.
It'd be like going on a field trip, when you were in elementary school. You're out.
One of the fun things about seeing this first season is because I'm seeing all the actors in their wardrobe because of Picard, reprising themselves and how they look now. And it's so funny to see the difference between then and now. I mean, Jonathan Frakes, oh my God, he was just such a different looking man and actor than he is now. It's astounding.
Well, I look the same. I look exactly the same.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Actually, on that Riker note, this was the first episode in which I noticed kind of what people had mentioned in the past, which was the Riker character was kind of modeled after Captain Kirk. And this was the first episode where I kind of saw that a little bit, because when he just kind of the way he would like leer a little bit, and when he hugged that lady, he actually he hugged her and he went, And I was like, whoa, easy. And he and Worf were like chumming it up. This was exciting for them. But I saw a little Kirk in there. Do you remember
I saw that hug.
Yeah. I lit that.
It was one of the. It was like, this is mine.
Yeah. He's like,
Yeah. Well, I had always heard that, Riker was standing by if they were taking a risk with Patrick as the captain, that if that didn't fly for whatever reason, whether the fans didn't accept it, whether, the studio didn't get it, that, they were going to kill him and Riker was going to take over.
Oh, really?
I never heard that.
That was always, now, it could be one of those, urban legends. I don't know, but that it was so the casting of Jonathan was, had many layers to it. They wanted a number, his number one, but he also could have possibly been the next captain.
Wow, that makes sense.
I'll have to ask Rick about that. I'll ask Rick. I'd like to know. I'll report back.
Awesome.
Jamie, I want to ask.
Don't tell him I said it.
Throw it on me. Say some weird fan.
There's already some odd little tales that are roaming around.
Jamie, I want to ask you. You said that this was early on, and a lot of the characters hadn't been formed yet. What were some of the conversations you were having with the cast about their characters, or about how to approach different scenes? Do you recall any of those?
I don't. I don't know that there was. It's more like when a show is finding itself, the actors are who they are, which is different than what they originally were written as pilot. So there's a dance that happens where the writers are hearing what the actors really sound like, and they start writing for them as they are, as opposed to just a hypothetical in a pilot. And it takes a season or so before that all melds together. And that was sort of where this was. It wasn't like they were searching for who they were as much as they were trying to get comfortable with the dialogue, and the writers were trying to get comfortable with who each of them was individually, so the dialogue could be, designed for them. So it was more like that. It just it was a show evolving, finding itself.
On that note, Jamie, whether you remember this from 35 years ago or whether you remember this from 2 days ago watching it, was there a character and actor that you felt had the best blend of having the writers having that character fleshed out and the writer or the actor being close to the character? Was there one that you felt was already kind of there?
Well, funny in terms of what we were just talking about, but Patrick always just seemed so comfortable. I mean, Patrick seemed like a captain, and he felt like he was in charge. I thought Jonathan was trying to find out who that character was. I think Michael was fine. I think Worf was Worf, and it grew and got better, but he was already sort of there. The other characters were pretty much who they were. None of them had a lot to do as individual characters, so it was hard to showcase anybody. But I thought Patrick was just always very comfortable as the captain. Do you agree, Denise?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was, I always felt that it was so easy as an actor to assume that kind of, this is the respect and that kind of authority that, one would have to create as an actor to kind of, but it was just inherent because he commanded that kind of energy on the set. He was quite serious, where a lot of times we were just ridiculously silly and goofy. He never engaged in that kind of behavior. We got called out on it a couple times, and he loosened up as the years have gone on. But, at that point, he was coming from, a English theater background, and things were done quite differently. And so he had already that kind of what you're talking about, that aura of control and command.
Right. The English accent really does add to that.
Yeah, exactly. So it was like, oh yeah, if he just gave you one. Plus, his tone as the captain is very serious. Sometimes he's very stern. Still, at this point, he'll answer somebody, whether it's Data, just get to the point, cut to the chase. I'm going to do it this way.
And stop babbling, Data.
Yeah,
yes.
He's still addressing, the crusher boy or boy. He calls him boy at some point. It sometimes I'm watching it and going, wow, he's tough.
And I will say, watching the show, that the dilemma was a classic Star Trek dilemma, where you might have to sacrifice this boy to fulfill the prime directive. I think that's one of the things that Gene held dear. He really wanted to make these hard choices that we would have to say, well, if it was me, what would I do? And that was one good piece of writing in that is
absolutely.
It's a real dilemma.
I mean, that's a philosophical principle that's taught in school. I forget what it's called, but would you sacrifice one to save the lives of many?
Right. And they flatly asked that question in this episode, which was great. And this is another one that's super explored in the famous and infamous episode Tuvix on Voyager, Star Trek Voyager. But that was 2 for 1. He flatly said, would you save one life to risk 1,000 or whatever it was? And it was really cool to see Star Trek saying that in episode 7 already.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
The other concept they dealt with was the idea that an advanced species would appear as a god to another less advanced species. Kind of an interesting forward-thinking concept that wasn't really talked about much as far as just philosophizing about these kinds of things. But James, also I wanted to say that I felt like we just talked about Picard's character, and I felt like this was really his best performance so far, because he did balance the stern with the compassion, with the balancing. I felt him weighing out all of this stuff in his mind and his performance. And I really enjoyed his performance in this. When you're coming on early on in the show, what are some of the things that you're doing stylistically to make a decision like this is the kind of Star Trek style that I'm going to adhere to or create? What are some of those decisions like?
Well, one thing that I did, and my style has evolved over the years, but even back then I moved the camera a lot. And I think the first or second shot is a very low tracking shot underneath Patrick on the bridge, and just wraps around him like this. And it sort of set a tone for him being in control. There's a lot of handoffs where someone will start speaking and will start to cross, and that hands off to somebody else who then speaks. Try to keep the camera almost like a character on the bridge with everybody else. And I try to move the camera and do that kind of thing whenever possible, without sacrificing the coverage necessary or the close-ups that you need to tell the story properly. And there was a lot of good opportunities on Star Trek on this episode and throughout the years to do that kind of thing, especially on the bridge where you had a lot of people standing around talking. It was nice to be able to insert movement either by having them move or have the camera move, and to give it a lot of energy.
And you mentioned earlier about giving the studio and the producers a lot of coverage when you're doing your filming. How are you able to get a lot of coverage done in the same amount of time that other people are not? Do you print takes faster, or how do you do that?
It's like, I'm just better, whatever.
A lot of it is knowing exactly what I want. So if I'm happy, I'll say cut print over here instead of cut. Everybody gather, talk, and then they say, okay, what do you want to do? You can, I'm sure Denise has experienced this, where you hear cut and then nothing happens for 5 or 10 minutes, and you don't know if the scene is over or not, or what the next shot's going to be. I was never like that. It was cut print over here, cut print over here, and I prepared completely. I always sketched out every set, all the blocking, and I always knew exactly the shots that I wanted to have for that day. And it would be, exactly, all the camera moves were all pre-planned. If the actors had a different idea, I would adjust to what they wanted to do. But as a rule, I knew exactly what to do. So it would go cut print over here, cut print over there. And I was the pilot is 1 and 2. So episode 3, I was only the fifth the director. So the directors that may have had before me may not have been as efficient or not have given them as much coverage. So when they saw all the coverage I gave, they were thrilled, because I guess they hadn't gotten up until that point. So it's a combination of my style, and I think maybe Ed, the DP, was getting a little bit quicker, though he never got very quick. So it worked to my advantage. And I loved the show, and I was energized throughout, and so it all worked out really well.
Wow.
Well, James, we only have a couple minutes left with you here, but were there some things upon viewing this? I wasn't sure if you're going to watch it before coming on, so that's really cool that you did. Was there anything that you thought, I wish I had done this, or not so much in hindsight, but you could put yourself back then saying, I wanted to do this, but we're out of time, or we didn't have the budget for this? And then were there some things that maybe you saw a couple of days ago that you thought, damn, that's pretty good. I forgot I did that. That was good.
Actually, some of the camera moves I had forgotten about. I forgot about a lot of it when I watched it. But there was nothing I watched and said, "Oh, I wish I hadn't done that." I didn't see any of that. The only thing was stylistically, in terms of performance, I wish it had been much looser. And I'm sure it was just the way the show was. When you are rewatching these episodes, I'd be curious to know when it loosens up, because it certainly wasn't like that when I came. It may not have been like that by the last episode of this season, but it just seemed almost like there was stage acting to some degree. The voices were a little louder than they should have been, and it was all a little bit stiffer than you would expect. And I'm not sure when that went away. Denise, you'll notice certainly when you watch the episode. Did you sense that during the season as it developed?
Yes, I mean, I think. For me, it's so unique because I came back periodically. I came back in season 3. I came back in season 4. So for me, I could monitor the temperament and the tone that was going on. At this point, I feel like we're just thrown out there. without caution, and going, you guys got to figure this out. You got to figure out what this phaser does, how you hold it, you push
tiny little tic tac of a phaser.
So small.
That's right. They're like,
I was like, what the hell? It doesn't even look menacing. It doesn't even put fear in somebody. Put that down. Like,
wait a minute. But the whole time I was running with that big one on my hip.
Yeah.
Remember? Where did it go? Where did that phaser go? So I've got the little guy now.
That's flair.
I also think what was happening is the actors were taking the cue off of Patrick, because Patrick was English and his character was a little bigger than life and a little more formal than theirs. I think subconsciously they sort of got trapped in there, and then that went away.
Well, and again, you're in an environment that is pure science fiction fantasy. So you're trying to figure out how is this real? Right. And what happens, you're right, people with that British accent, I would see it all the time. People would just suddenly fall into this kind of Shakespearean quality. A lot of guest stars that would happen to. It would be this odd kind of Shakespearean speak they would go into, instead of how does the engineer speak, how does the person who cleans the ship, who are these people? And it's so it was a little outside of the norm. It shouldn't have been. We should have all gotten reminded or reconnected that no, we're people just like the guy is at the bank right now, or slinging coffee at Starbucks. These are real people doing real jobs. Right.
And TV and acting styles have changed dramatically since the mid 80s. Sure. But for example, now and for the last 20 years, there's a read through of the entire script before you ever start shooting. And that's right. And that makes a huge difference, because you're all in the same room with all the writers, the producers, the executive producer, and you're reading the script. And if you can voice these kinds of things, you can find the universe, you can find the comfort zone for what the show should be. And I think it was very different then. And it was also a strange, there was a syndicated show. Nobody was quite sure where it was going to be on and what are we doing here. And they were just literally trying to find out what this show was.
Absolutely, 100%. Do you remember, though, in the first season, we did do table reads?
Oh, I don't remember that.
You don't? Yeah, it only happened in the first season. I was telling these guys about it. Gene would be there, Rick, the director, and all of us. And we'd go page by page. Sandwiches would be brought into some, little ante room in the writers' building. And we'd go through it. That was completely abandoned, when I came back to the third season. I said, don't you guys do table reads anymore? And they said, oh, no, we didn't. We stopped doing those.
They're very valuable. Producers tend to not like them when the actors start complaining about the dialogue. That may have happened. So they're
like, no more. Yeah. That's it. Well, no more table. No more croissants.
Yeah. I'm sure that's how that went. Yeah.
I just love hearing you guys say, oh, Gene and Rick, like, oh, no big, Gene was there, Rick, and we're like, what? Gene Roddenberry? Rick, this is crazy. But this has been so much fun, Jamie. We really appreciate you taking the time and talking with us, and we hope it's not going to be another year and a half before the next time you're on the show, because your next episode's in just a few months. So, but thank you. We really liked it.
See everybody. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Everybody stick around. We'll be right back on The Seventh Rule. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc, Lofton, and Denise Crosby.
Hello.
We just had a very professional break right now. Zero jokes. And we did not discuss the outfits in any way. Here are the trivioids of the week. The crew of the Enterprise has discovered a Class M planet in the Rubicon star system. Dr. Crusher wants shore leave for the crew. Wesley shows off his cartwheel skills. Data lies down with a big ball on his head. Riker drops a mediator. Leotor gets all passive aggressive. Picard wants to talk to Beverly about her son in person. Data realizes that he does tend to babble. Picard refuses to let arithmetic decide questions, and Rivon thinks Picard must be a god. All right. So now that Jamie's gone, we could get back to giggling. I had the most fun. I had the most fun watching this. I mean, whatever. I've been planning that for years. I've been looking, if we do Next Generation, this is going to be a party. But I did not realize how much I would laugh watching this episode. Every line cracked me up.
Oh my God. When I think it was last year on the Star Trek cruise, a couple of people on costume night dressed as Ito.
Love it.
I screamed. I think I chased them around the boat.
They're good runners.
In awe.
You'll never catch them.
I liked how when Mr. Conway decided to do the establishing shot when they walk in, when you guys all walk into the room, he has this slow pan across this guy on a massage table, and he ends on his booty cheeks for about 30 seconds. I'm like, how long is
not long enough?
How long is this cheek shot gonna last?
And that guy was oiled up.
And
the whole bottle was on that dude.
I forgot to ask Jamie, but the rumor was he slipped off the table.
I was like,
yeah, I know.
I was like, is this is like a close up right now.
It's so softcore porn, this episode. I mean, I think it probably could get qualify as such. I mean,
PG-13.
Wow.
And I kept thinking for the actor who plays the main Ito guy in this thing. I was thinking the same thing. Was he told prior that he's going to be basically spending half of this episode?
He was sunburned
the whole episode naked.
Did you notice he was sunburnt?
I'm sure that's a lot of makeup, or they put him in a tanning booth like a couple days.
He was reddish.
Everybody was an orangey spray tan type of.
There's that. But I mean, and the girl is very tan as well. There's no way they had to have that been a qualifying thing for,
right. Are you okay?
Yeah, because they're not going to put a bunch of fat gutted, big butted, out of shape people in those outfits. No way. Everyone's like perfect.
I did see an old lady there, but she was kind of hiding behind people. I was like, whoa, what do they do with those poor ladies?
Well, I noticed that they don't have black guys in there because we couldn't fit into one of those. They'd have.
What do you mean, Cirroc? I don't understand. I don't understand the reference.
We'd have to have some longer shorts or something,
extra thing going on there.
Shorts.
Yeah,
you know what? I thought, I'm looking at this one. Okay, we went to the Code of Honor planet, the all black planet. Yeah. Now we're at the all blonde, curly hair.
Yeah.
So, we're just gonna go one by
check boxing. By episode 21, they're on the Samoan planet.
Yeah.
It's hold on that way. What are you doing here, Captain?
That's episode 11.
That's episode 11.
I do want to point out one thing, which I thought was maybe the best written line and the best delivered line, was a Riker line, and it wasn't his. It was when Riker tries to contact the Enterprise, and he can't get through, and he says, the quote is, I think he says it to Deanna Troi. He says, "This may be nothing, but let's move all our people together." I thought that was a very wise command decision of everything's great, everything's wonderful, and this may be nothing, but let's get our people together and assess the situation just in case, until we can rule out that there's anything that we need to worry about. Thought it was well written, and I loved the way he delivered it. And I was kind of taken aback. I was like, whoa, I wasn't expecting such a good line in the middle of what's all this?
It was a good line. It was well delivered, and Riker does have a level of machismo and bravado. He has definitely an alpha male when it comes down to certain situations, and he exposes it in some instances. But I thought two other lines that jumped out at me was when Picard was being told that, you don't care about my son or something, or you're not, you don't care about the lives of the people or something to that effect. He said, his answer was, "But I am." You're not concerned with my son. And he said, "But I am." And the way he said it, it was very short, but I thought it was believable. It's like, yeah, but I am worried about this. I am concerned about this decision that I have to make. And I thought the way he delivered it was perfect. And also,
it shifted course, right? That, just
right
stopped,
then.
It stopped everything.
Because Crusher was like, well, what the hell? I mean, like, my son, you don't care whether he lives or dies. Like, and he's like, no, you're not concerned whether Wesley dies. And he's like, I am. Trust me. Like, I'm trying to figure this out, but we have to follow this thing. I can't compromise myself. I can't, I thought it was just well delivered, because it ended the further debate of whether he cared about it or not. I thought that was great. Also, Denise, I thought you had an excellent delivery in this episode of a line. But when you said, "What of justice for Wesley?"
Yes.
And the way you said it, it was just like, yeah, if we're in the pursuit of justice, is, for your people and for your cause, what about his justice? And I thought the way you delivered that was perfect, because in order for there to really be justice, it has to be equitable on both sides of the equation, right? The crime has to meet the punishment has to equal the crime. That's how the justice works. And I felt
and also,
like
if there isn't justice for one person, then there is no justice.
Right.
Which is, and I thought the delivery was excellent, Denise, the way you did that.
What's so I loved the whole sort of pulling apart the idea of the death penalty, that we have come, sometimes there'll be these just little nuggets of real foreshadowing that this show was able to do way back then, to put that out there, that we saw that wasn't what we needed. That isn't true justice. And unfortunately, some people thought it was at the time, but we no longer see that as valid. And, these are the things we're still deliberating. We're still struggling with the notion that if justice, if there's no justice for one, there's no justice for all.
Then there is no justice.
In light of this, what we just saw in Memphis, what we're seeing, this is on the table as we speak right now. These very deep, resonating, philosophical humanity, is at stake.
What's really great about seeing this in early Star Trek episodes is we've covered pretty extensively the first 6 episodes, talking about how it's kind of herky-jerky. There's writing, changes. The actors don't really know what they're expected to do very much. But the great part is that we keep catching that the actors would recognize when there was a important and poignant line. And you did those lines justice, because, it could have been easy to lose sight of it in people running around in their underwear or Ferengi going like this in your face. It might be easy to miss the importance of these little nuggets, but it seems like time and time again, the actors, you and your friends, Denise, caught these nuggets and were able to deliver them in a timeless way that 35 years later, we're like, nailed it. Good job.
Well, this particular episode, I think, really hits some topics here. The justice issue is really a powerful, compelling one, and of course, the God story is again, this is the stuff that you can really kind of explore in this world of Star Trek. And this is, to me, feeling like the first time we're kind of getting solid into that territory where, you know, we can really discuss some issues, some things at stake that are, you know, almost existential in their meaning, you know, and it's starting to, you know, again, we listened to James talk about how the struggles were going on in the writers room, the frustrations and that was what was very much a part of my feeling of the show. And but once in a while, this germ would come through, this little grain of this pearl of wisdom, you know, and that's what you latched onto, and yes, we recognized it.
Yeah, and I would say also, you know, this is why this is my favorite episode so far, because
that's why Cirroc.
No, really, literally,
it's mine too.
Yeah, because so far it is, because it does deal with God, it does deal with justice. It takes on these principles. It takes on the
prime directive.
The prime directive, the tenet that they live by. Like he literally is handcuffed by it at some point.
Right.
And also trying to get another life form to understand what decisions he has to make and have empathy for his decision-making process. Right. That was pretty much the goal. How do I communicate to this other life form that I can't allow you to do what you have to do, but I'm also obligated by the prime directive. So it was a great balance there. I thought this was the most successful job of sticking to a theme and executing it. And this episode did that for me.
That's a good point.
The other thing I want to say that, you know, in addition to what you were talking about, Denise, as far as just being ahead of the curve and talking about something that we didn't really have as part of the national conversation. You just mentioned the death penalty and, you know, things of that nature. The thing that I thought was interesting was that they brought up this multi-dimensional species, right? When have you heard of a multi-dimensional species being talked about in such a way?
Not in 87, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, in 87, it wasn't a big thing. And even further than that, I wanted to say, I don't know about you guys, but I felt a very emotional connection with the actress when she felt like she was being exposed to her God.
Yeah.
She bows down and closes her eyes, and she just can't even, you know,
she's inconsolable.
This information is too much.
Excellent. I thought I'd forgotten, you know, the emotional impact of that. Yeah, she was just, I mean, she was just, you know, beyond worship at that point. You know, in reverence, in complete, you know.
Well, I mean, imagine that happens to anybody, who gets, okay, this is what you believe in, and here I'm going to expose you to the thing.
Steph Curry.
You know,
and it's so, and again, within the context of Gene Roddenberry's show, and he made no secrets about him being an atheist.
Right.
So his exploration of these themes and what is he after here? What is he trying to reflect humanity on humanity about this, you know, monotheism and this God worship, and what does it mean, you know, to this particular race of people? It meant all and everything.
Right. It's completely, their order. It's their existence is defined by it. Yeah.
Exactly. There's no, and so now you come into, you know, a conflict that takes some resolve, takes looking at it from a different prism, you know, from a different perspective, even though this is your place, you're entitled to your rules. However, life is never that way. It's never a book of rules. So we've got to find a way. And I loved that Picard asked it of himself. I'm not going to let Wesley die, but I've got to get them to understand why not.
Right. He doesn't want us to play might makes right. He wants to say reason makes right. He wants them to understand and to give him willingly.
Yes. Yeah. And it was really thoughtful. I was surprised by this episode. Because I'm in my mind, I've got the, Edo and their outfits running around and the distraction of that in a way.
Right. Well, that's
and just constant love making and the love and the sexualization of it all kind of tricks you a little bit off of what is this about?
That's a lot of what's going on with early Star Trek too, is a lot of times we get caught up, and myself as a fan as well, we get caught up in, this one gets a low score because the makeup wasn't great, or this one gets a low score because of this dumb scene, or this, we kind of but then if you can kind of just get past the messy, we get it. We know things were imperfect. They were very far from perfect. But when you get past it and you peel that onion away, you see there are so many, morals and themes and ideas that were trying to be explored, however clunky. But, it's great. Like an episode like this, it's so funny because basically we're finding like diamonds, in the rough there,
Right. Embedded, and kind of you cut through the distraction.
You mentioned about Roddenberry, being kind of an open atheist. But I think that, interestingly enough, a lot of the themes that make Star Trek great are the biblical themes that have been extracted and kind of reworked into a different form to fit this science fiction narrative. So, whether he believes or not, he still extracts a lot of the morality lessons, a lot of the, metaphoric ways to talk about things.
Exactly.
Inside of his own work. And when we were talking just now, it made me think of this episode almost as a reflection of the Garden of Eden, and that these characters are like Adam and Eve walking around in the garden, and they've been told by God, these are the rules, and they're obeying those rules. And here comes the serpent, Starfleet, leading them into temptation by breaking the rules that were assigned to this Eden. Right. These are we're breaking the rules. And so I felt like this was kind of an Adam and Eve type of story.
So do you think that's why they called them the Edo?
I do think that's why they call it the
possible.
Edo. I also think that's why they're walking around half naked, because that's how we envision Adam and Eve in the garden.
They set it up as the most beautiful, enchanting. There's no cry. It's all about love. And when we first beam in and we start to go, they want to take us to the inside and meet everyone, and we're running. Tasha Yar says to Troy, "It's like Eden." She does say it's like Eden.
Yes.
So yeah, it's
just a reflection of the Adam and Eve story of temptation, of the rule breaking of God's rules. This is a whole bunch of that just tied up into this science fiction episode. I thought like I said, it's my favorite one so far. Really enjoyed it. And interestingly enough, James Conway comes in and directs. And when he comes in, he came in the first season of this show, and to me, does enough to change slight directions of each character. I felt like, for example, Picard was the best version of himself so far. He showed compassion. He also showed leadership, and he showed, so many things that I hadn't seen before. He took initiative. He took action. He also said, I'm going to make a personal conversation with Dr. Crusher, as opposed to just making an announcement on the speaker or something. Little things like that showed great leadership for me on his part. But yeah, and then in our show, he did James Conway did Duet, which also set the tone for our show as far as stepping the bar up. So whether it's a coincidence that they bring him in for these kinds of things, or it is his touch that he brings to it, I have to say that when James Conway leaves, he leaves it better. He leaves it better than when he got there.
Wow, I hope he hears this. So on that note, we got a couple minutes left. It is time for the home run of the day. Check it out. This is from our good buddy Carrie Schwent. Actually sent in this great thing, the home run of the episode. Cirroc, who do you think deserves the home run of the episode today?
My home run goes to Mr. Patrick Stewart, Sir Patrick Stewart. I thought his portrayal of Picard was really good in this episode. I liked the leadership that he showed and the decision making. He even caught himself when he realized he was too hard on Data for saying that he babbled too much. And he realized that in his babbling, he actually gets information. So he didn't want to change that about him. And I think that's a sign of a good leader to recognize those kinds of things. Also enjoyed his speech at the end when he says, there can be no justice so long as laws are absolute. And we've experienced that many times in our own understanding of things. There's no real absolutes in the world. There's always exceptions. There's always, occasions in which you have to kind of throw the norms out of the window. And I think that that's part of evolution. That's how we get genetic selection. That's how we get all of these things, because of laws being broken, because of the exceptions to rules.
What about you, Denise?
Wow, I'm leaning towards the writers of this episode because of the way they were able to address these profound topics of justice, of the Prime Directive. I loved when when Picard said, I don't believe the Prime Directive was meant for this. It's like so many of our amendments, and in our Constitution, people, certainly the Second Amendment has gone through so much of this. Well, we have the right to bear arms. Well, not AK-47s, I mean, this is not what the Second Amendment was meant to say, So it's again, this unraveling of these hard lines of rule that really allow for interpretation that apply to the moment at hand. And this is really, I think, because this is really a tenet of Star Trek, the Prime Directive. So to be able to look at it in that prism from that place was, I think, really important to remind us that even though, they're ruled by the Prime Directive, they too understand really it's written by men to be interpreted by men. I mean, men and women, and to be applied to the scene at hand. So I will go with the writers on this one.
Speaking of apply, my home run of the day is whoever in the wardrobe department was the glue person whose job it was to apply glue to whatever piece was. I mean, these things are being held on by like nothing. Like there was clearly a glue person and a sewing person that just was in charge of making sure everything always was.
Yeah. And we should probably give a shout out to Gillette Razor Company.
All right, new sponsor. That's a good one. All right, let's give a special shout out as well to Homer Frizzell, Dr. Marie Segal, Eve England out in Wales, Yvette Blackmon-Tom, Carmen, a.k.a. Skillet, TJ Jackson-Bey out in Missouri, Bill Victor Arucan, Titus Mohler, Darlena Marie, Dr. Mohamed Noor, Tierney C. Dieckmann, Anna Post, Rex A. Wood, Anil O. Polat, Joe Balsarati, Mike Gu, DQ, Neal Akasaka, Justine Norton-Kertson, Dr. Stephanie Baker, Carrie Schwent, Faith Howell, Edward Foltz, My Live from Tokyo, Matt Boardman, Chris McGee, Justin Weir, Jake Barrett, Jane Jorgensen, Henry Unger, Jed Thompson, Amy Renee Haynes, Sean Mouch, Marcia Classic Schreier, and of course, Dr. Susan V. Gruner, who's ill, so I don't know if she'll be making it today, but we wish her well. Everybody stick around. We'll be right back with that free-for-all on the Seventh Rule. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton and very special guest, Mr. Rod Roddenberry.
Hey, hello, guys. Good to be here, man. Good to see you.
So, some of you may be wondering, Rod Roddenberry, what did we do to deserve this? Well,
this punishment?
No. Well,
the special guest.
Many people may not know, including myself until very recently, that Rod Roddenberry here actually acted in this episode somewhat.
Can we use the word acted?
Will you tell us, what do you remember about this?
I can't. So was it first or second season? First season, right? Yeah. Okay. So I people have heard that I was a PA. My father, of course, got me a job as a PA during the summer, 1987. I guess I was somewhere around 12 years old. And that PA, for those who don't know, a production assistant or gopher, you run scripts around, you make coffee, you do those sorts of things, and you get a bike and you run around a lot. And as a kid, I was kind of pissed because it was summer and my friends were all playing and doing stuff, and I wanted to do that, but my father, in his own way, was trying to sort of like, you got to get a job and learn what it's like to earn a living, even though I was the producer's son on a TV show. Anyhow, there's a lot of ways we could dissect this and pull it apart. But it was a great experience. I wasn't into production, really. I wasn't like, oh, I want to be a producer when I grow up. I just made the most fun of it. And I'm getting to the part. My mother had put me in commercials when I was even younger. So there's a couple of commercials out there. There's a Granola Clusters, Max Steel's Robot Force, One to Grow On, Kingsford Charcoal. I already said granola, and I think anyhow,
One to Grow On. Wow.
One to Grow On. Yes. I can tell that story. I was just a kid, a bird watcher. I was a bird watching kid, and a girl wanted to play with me, like hang out or whatever. And I was like, no, leave me alone. I want to watch birds. I don't know. And they I think, there's a point where they show the beginning scene and then someone talks about, I don't know, in a nicer way, don't be a dick to your friends, I guess they were saying. And they film like my ass coming out of the bushes with my binoculars. And then I see her with another guy and I'm like, oh, I learned my lesson. If I don't play with my friends, they're going to find someone else to play with.
And so that's what One to Grow On.
And that's, I still really don't know if the messaging is that solid, but if we just chalk it up to don't be a dick to your friends, I think that holds up. Anyhow.
Yeah. So she wanted you to be in acting. So your mom wanted you to be in acting? My parents
did everything they could to get me into the biz, like whatever it was. So yes, they wanted me to get into acting, and I'm a terrible actor. I was a kid and didn't want to listen to anyone. I remember Max Steel's Robot Force, the director got mad at me because I talked back or something. I just wanted to play with the goddamn toys. So anyhow, Star Trek comes along, and of course they have I guess a scene down on the Pleasure Planet, or it's not Rise Up, but the Justice, right? And sure enough, I'm at that age where girls are starting to look interesting, but I don't really know what's going on. And I'll get to that point.
How old were you?
It must have been 12. It must have been 12. Yeah. And they sent me to wardrobe. And I remember when they put like everything's like pink and purple and pastels. And they put me in this like it's fucking Speedo or something. Pardon my language. It's so tight, and I'm this little kid, and there's a little pocket to put my junk in, and I've never been in this situation where there is a person, another man. I don't know if it was, who was it? It's not Bill Tice, or I don't know who it was, but they're telling me you put it in there. But if you look, even the picture right behind you, everyone's got their little nub kind of just poking right out. And that's what I had. I had a little tight, I'm 12 years old with the little nub there. And, I'm the whole time I'm like, I don't know. Do I ask for protective services at this point? I don't know if I'm, I don't mean to make jokes about it, but it was just a weird experience at my point.
Totally.
And of course it was a location shoot. A location I think they shot at many, many times. It's that futuristic.
The Japanese garden at the Tillman water plant.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you've been there. I don't know how many scenes they've done, but so that was it. So I was just background, and they had a couple scenes. I remember once with kids running down a hill and all that. All this is to say, my acting was so good, I was cut out of the whole thing. But there was this incredibly attractive blonde girl there. I don't know. She must have been 16 or something like that. And I was just, and she was wearing, what they were wearing. And I was just infatuated and just goo goo gaga over her. Clearly nothing happened. She was out of my league and all that. But that's, I think I've covered the basis on that one.
Do you remember if it was 1 day or 2 day? Were you just there for just the 1 day?
I feel like it was just 1 day. I don't remember a second day. I was in a second episode, and my head is actually in it. The back of my head is in a different episode. I know we're talking about this one, Justice. Is it Justice?
Yeah.
There's a school scene where the back of my head, like I'm talking to the teacher and I just leave camp. Basically, you see this. So
he still got it.
So the back of my head was in there. So anyhow.
The back of your head is a great actor.
It is fantastic. Look, I mean, you should do the rest of the interview like this. It is my best side.
Well, now, lastly, on this, this episode, Justice, do you remember if you were running in groups, or if you're running by yourself, or if you're going back and forth a million times? Do you have any memories of just kind of like the minutia of the day? Were your legs getting tired? Was it hot?
No, I don't remember if it was hot. I do remember, again, this outfit being very uncomfortable and very revealing.
Yeah.
And then,
not good for a 12-year-old boy. It's not good for a 12-year-old boy.
But I mean, it was exciting because there were a lot of attractive women in scantily clad outfits. And I again, not really knowing what to do, but being 12 and knowing there's something going on. There's things firing up here and down there, and I am interested in this. That was probably what I took away most from the day. But yes, running in groups with other kids was pretty much it. But certainly wasn't a part of the scene where Wesley Crusher tramples the flowers or whatever it was he ran into.
How is it like the Huntington something or other?
So on the summertime jobs when you were doing the PA stuff, we just had a picture Ryan showed. I think was it the Kudas that posted.
Mm-hmm.
What were you jumping around from department to department? Were you at your dad's offices? Like what was your what was your rotation like?
I did 3 or 4 summers as a PA. And I started in, the first production office, 1987 or 86, 87 for Next Generation was a trailer. They weren't in any buildings. It was one of the trailers behind the big blue screen. They just had a couple of trailers back there. So I was with Next Gen for 1 or 2 years. And then the picture is from Deep Space Nine, where I was working at the Deep Space Nine art department. I don't know if it was season 1 or 2 of Deep Space Nine, but It was early on, and I stayed in there. But again, as a PA gopher, I was picking up dailies, dropping off dailies. I was going all over the lot. Being in the art department, it was definitely more focused art department related items, but it was great. And this is back before 9/11. This is back before heavy security. There was security, but I was tearing up that lot on the bikes. I broke every single bike they gave me because I was jumping over stuff and running into things. And I just made it fun. Nowadays, you couldn't get away with anything like that. But the good old days.
I remember those days.
Sounds
I
like
remember the good old days. Just, you could set hop, you could jump from one set to another. Now it's like, oh, you're not on the show, you can't come in this door. There was a lot more leniency back in those days. Were you also at the production for the movies, or did you go to the sets while they were filming the motion pictures?
No, I funny enough, I never went to any of those as a production assistant or anything like that. But I can tell you again, God, this is even further back. I can't remember which movie, Star Trek 2 or Star Trek 3. Again, I was super young. My father took me on one of those sets once, and it was a Klingon bridge, and there were Klingons there. And I think I had sort of a girlfriend with me, but not really a girlfriend. I was way too young, but it was a girl. I don't know. All these things seem to focus around girls, but anyhow,
it was a girl friend.
It was a girlfriend. But no, I never had any significant experience with the movies. You must have shared, Cirroc, tons of stories on this show. I mean, I'd love to hear of the trouble you caused and got into, and you've probably got some good stories. Probably things you can't really say here, but
some stuff I can't say. But I do remember getting in a lot of trouble. I would steal the production electric vehicles, those little golf carts.
Yes.
And I would steal those every once in a while. They leave the keys in them all the time. So if I saw one and I had some free time, I'd just jump in it and just start riding around Paramount. And one time, I'm right there behind the blue screen in one of those golf carts, and I decided I wanted to play basketball in the golf cart. So I'm dribbling and driving.
Nice.
And so I dribble, I drive, I shoot out of the side of the window, and I go drive to pick it up. And I remember Bobby Della Santina was walking across the lot from production side to Deep Space Nine set, and he happened to see me. And he's like, "What the hell are you doing?" Like, he saw me with the cart. I'm not supposed to be on the cart. I was supposed to use it, and I'm now using it improperly, And he's like, "What the hell are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm just playing basketball."
What does it look like in a golf cart?
Yeah,
whatever.
In a golf cart, yeah. And so he was not pleased by that, obviously, and put a all points bulletin out. Do not let Cirroc on any of the golf carts.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Did you this is slightly unrelated, but it made me think of something. At certain production, I guess maybe every production, the actors, they get a lot of restrictions on what they can do in their personal life if there's any sort of danger involved. But of course, because if you went out, and I can't remember an exact example, but when I was working on a different show, I remember hearing a story like they couldn't, I don't know, play basketball or baseball or go ski, couldn't go on a ski trip because if they got hurt, that would greatly affect production. Did that happen to you? You're a young kid then. I imagine you wanted to go tear it up and.
Yeah. There was nothing they could do to get me to not ride bikes or skateboards or whatever the hell I was going to do. I was going to play basketball. Actually, the last season of DS9, I got a basketball show for Showtime. It's called The Hoop Life. And so I told Avery, I said, Avery, I just got this show. It's a Showtime show. I'm going to be moving to Canada to film it. It's 26 episodes already booked. And I was excited to be leaving. And so I told him I'm going to be going to the basketball court every day to get my game up for this show. Yeah. So I look like I'm ready. And I remember the day like it was yesterday. I came in, I was so excited. I'm going to UCLA right now after we finish today and go play. And he says to me, like really calmly, but he's just like, be careful.
and he was alluding to what you're talking about getting hurt. And I was like, yeah, sure. You know, what is he talking about? Be careful. You know, I'm going to play basketball. Man, I hurt myself so bad. I twisted my ankle. I tried to jump and block somebody's shot, landed on their foot, twisted my ankle so bad. I was in crutches for like 4 weeks. And so, yeah, I had to do the pilot of that show with basically a cast on my foot, and I'm hobbling, acting like I'm not hurt. And if you see it, you can tell I have no explosion. I have a busted ankle. And Avery telling me to be careful just like keeps echoing like he knew it was going to happen.
Wow.
Yeah. So those kinds of things do happen. And, you know, obviously you don't want to be costing production, you know, time and money to wait for you. And so, yeah, there's risk there. But, you know, I was a kid and I felt invincible. So when you're a kid, invincible, and you got time and a lot of disposable money, you kind of just want to go and attack the world.
Well, you also want to live your life. I mean, like, listen, I don't claim to know your life, but as a kid actor, you're in a box, right? I mean, you've got a life that no one really understands. I'm sure I assume you've talked about this, but I can't even imagine what it's like to grow up the way you grew up on set. Pros and cons, but I would say mostly cons, no?
The cons, there were certain cons. Being isolated from my friends and coming back and forth, that was the difficult thing. But yeah, I mean, I also felt like I felt the specialness that you feel when you're an actor on a series. You get the red carpet treatment. They're giving you gift baskets. You get the merchandise boxes and all of that stuff, and you get the flowers sent over. Thank you, welcoming you, and leather jackets and all that cool stuff that comes with being on a show and being treated that way. So I like that stuff. I like having my own trailer and those aspects. But yeah, there were difficult things like social things like the prom and school dances and like those kinds of things were difficult for me because I couldn't maneuver it.
Would you? Sorry sorry, I don't mean to guide this discussion here, but I'm now just curious, and so forgive me if I'm getting off topic here, but if you don't mind,
please.
If you had a chance to go back and change anything, magic, like obviously you can go back and do anything you want. Is there something you do differently? Would you do everything the same? Would you what would you do differently, if anything?
Yeah, you know what? I think I did everything I wanted to do. I spent a lot of time, even though I wasn't a PA, I was in the art department. I was in the publicity building. I was in the writer's room. I would be over there with Bender Goldman and Helper. I was like all over the Paramount lot. And so I actually did the things I wanted to do. I would hang out at the different sets I wanted to go to. I wouldn't change anything, except for maybe taking more items from the set towards the end.
Yes.
Grabbing a baseball.
Those kinds of things. Yeah, I would have grabbed a baseball maybe, or some things here and there that I know might be, my costume. I never got a costume.
One of those vests.
I should have asked for, one of my costumes because they had doubles of a lot of that stuff too. I could have gotten one or two. But yeah, those kinds of things I would take back and redo. But other than that, I think the memories are great. The people that I met, I developed a lot of good relationships with people, and no, I enjoyed my childhood. I didn't feel abused or misused or mistreated.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, that's fascinating. And I'm sorry, not to say it should, but I think you guys should do a podcast on kid actors. No, seriously, because and just from any genre, any show, kids who grew up in the limelight, because I think it is a very certainly unique way for a kid to grow up, and sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad, but it's so easy for people to, like, you see all this young people in Hollywood today and how if they get in TMZ and all that kind of crap, it's easy to ridicule these people, but no one really knows what it's like to be a kid on set. And I have some sense just because I'm in the industry and I hear a little bit. But there's a lot of challenges, and I wonder, I think it would be fascinating to hear the different perspectives of how kids went through that.
But actually, Rod, I thought you had a lot of pressure. I thought that you had a lot of weight on your shoulders, being that your dad was who he was, and people had these expectations on you. And I felt like you probably had more pressure on you than I did. I
not
was
then.
Like, I felt like it. I felt like, oh man, this guy, he's got the Star Trek universe on his, he's the heir to the Star Trek universe. I know they're looking at him like, oh, there's a lot. What is he going to do? Is he smart enough to handle it? Is he clever enough to continue this thing and keep it growing? And I thought that was a lot of pressure too. It's like, being Michael Jordan's son or something. It's not easy to grow up like that. So I respected you for handling it, and actually for not acting like an asshole about your,
hopefully not.
What you, yeah, no, you didn't. You didn't even really want to wave that flag around. You weren't I'm the guy from Star Trek, guys, look at me flag. You were like more like, I don't really give a shit about this, guys. I'm just here because because I gotta be here.
I don't know, for better or for worse, you're absolutely right. I didn't really give a shit back then. I was younger, and we all mature at different times. I'm still working on maturing myself. But yeah, I didn't really care. And it wasn't so much, fuck this, fuck everything. It was just sort of like, I'm 16, I'm 14, I'm whatever. I don't know what I want to do. I don't want to be in the business yet. I don't want to be the next Gene Roddenberry. So it was good because I got to be myself, and that is its own issue. But it was also bad because I didn't necessarily take advantage of the opportunities. Like, I didn't do what you did. Yeah, I delivered scripts to buildings, but I didn't hang out and go to editing and talk to JP Farrell and say, show me what's going on. I'd love to watch this. Can I say, I had every opportunity to do that, but I didn't. So if I changed anything, I'd do more of what you did. I never sat down in the writer's room. I don't think I was allowed in the writer's room, but still, I never asked.
I'm sure you could have got in there. I'm pretty sure they'd make an exception for you. But yeah, I did enjoy going to the set design, watching those guys in the wood mill making sets. I spent a lot of time getting to know each person in the process, and I mean, the genius level of people like Michael Okuda blew me out of the water. I was also interested in the intellectual aspect, like, oh, how does your mind work to come up with this stuff, and what subjects are you good at in order to be good at these things? And I kind of wanted to enrich myself in the intellectual aspect of what these people were doing and how they were executing their work.
Yeah. Man,
wow.
Curious.
Great
Just curious
times.
This is great stuff.
Curious, yeah.
But we, Rod, I know you do have to go in just a second here, but this was really cool. And we really appreciate you taking the time. And I feel like we could keep talking to you for a really long time because there's so much good stuff down memory lane. And the two of you are both so thoughtful with how you view this industry and, children in this industry and, just that whole situation. We'd love to talk more about it in the future. But for now, Rod, we just want to thank you for joining us today, taking the time away from your busy schedule.
No, my pleasure, guys. Thanks for having me on. I know I didn't have that much to say about justice, but except tell you about how tight my pink Speedo was.
We figured.
But it is something that stays in my memory, not just because of that, mostly because of that 16-year-old girl, but I don't remember her name. Anyhow.
Luckily for you, that footage never made it on the screen. So you're actually lucky that it didn't come out.
I look, I keep looking at the picture behind you and I'm thinking like, I'm glad I'm not, photoed right there with my little
Star Trek and a Star Trek. Anyway, all right. Well, Rod, thanks very much. And everybody at home, stick around. There's more Seventh Rule for you right after this. We'll be right back on the Seventh Rule. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Seventh Rule. We did just have another very professional break, and now it is time for the free-for-all. And joining us, of course, is Melissa Longo, Dr. Mohamed Noor, Justin Weir, Homer Frizzell, Eve England out in Wales, Dr. Susan V. Gruner losing her voice, Jed Thompson with plenty of voice today, Carrie Schwent, the birthday girl, Chris McGee, TJ Jackson-Bey, the party Gorn. We've got Matt Boardman and my live in Tokyo. Melissa, forgetting that Cirroc held up a loincloth a minute ago, can you get us started?
You can.
This episode, I had a lot of fun watching the first like 3 or 12 scenes. I don't know. I just kept laughing and laughing and laughing and laughing. And at one point I wondered what it must have been like to be a background actor that day or for that shoot, because one of the opening moments at Starfleet Academy, by the way, was this couple on the grass and, the scantily clad outfit, and they're making out. And I'm like, wow. So I wonder what their direction was. So you're going to stay on background. You're going to start making out in the grass. But and then when the away team beamed down to the planet and all of the very friendly hugs.
Oh yeah.
and Troy's, the look on her face when the one guy comes in and she's like, and Worf's line, "Nice planet."
Yeah.
It just had me I was giggling a lot. And then I saw these two guys playing their little instruments and
I don't know, that cracked me up.
It was it was fun. It was fun.
You're still recovering.
Well, and then but I will say on a more serious note, the thing that stood out to me the most in this episode, besides the obvious, was Gates's performance in this when she's so worried about Wesley and his fate, what was going to happen. I felt that she towed that line very well, between sheer terror and trying to keep it professional. So yeah.
Cirroc, you're going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say that planet had a lot of moons on it, because there was a lot of mooning going on.
Oh, that's what I get. That's what happens when you ask. By the way, Jake Sisko guesses the IMDb score.
Oh, geez.
Wow. I'm going to go with a 7.5. I'm going to go with a 7.5.
Does anybody else have any guesses that doesn't already know, that didn't?
6.8.
I was going to say
7.6.
6.2.
5.4.
Yeah, no peeking in this episode.
5.4. Whoa.
Dang.
The answer
Cells,
is
baby.
5. Wow.
6.0.
Wow.
It was. I know. That's a very low for an episode that made us all giggle. And by all of us, I mean the 4 of us that have spoken so far. I don't know if the rest of you liked it. Oh my God, I can't wait. Let's just skip ahead. Let's just skip ahead to Eve right now, real quick, because she's never seen. All the rest of us knew what to expect, and she's giggling shamelessly. What did you think of this episode?
Well,
Eve. Well, blimey. I don't know. Obviously, when I first saw the title in Ryan's email, I thought, this is going to be, this could be a good philosophical question about what the meaning of justice might be. And I was like, okay, this could be a nice little legal one. And then obviously we get the first bit where we arrive on the planet, and I just thought, okay, this is not what I was expecting.
Well, you being an attorney, by the way, that's why it kind of piqued your
and I was
interest.
like, And straight away, I was like, holy moly, what on earth was Riker doing sending a child to that planet? And recommending that this is a suitable place to have an R&R session for a family ship. It's full of families, and this is, and it's a sex planet. I was like, are you kidding? This is like, he needs to be fired and been sent to HR straight away, because he has got no sense of judgment whatsoever. So that was my first thought. But I thought, obviously it was just hilarious, but I'm assuming it wasn't intended to be hilarious. I think that's just us looking back at it now. And I was kind of a bit disappointed, because I thought it could have been something really interesting, about, the whole concept about, what justice was, but they didn't really even touch upon that, other than Picard's very brief statement right at the end about, the law shouldn't be absolute, it's got to have exceptions. But I was like, they didn't really kind of talk about that. They kind of, obviously, the whole premise was how unfair it was that, that Wesley basically fell on some plants and was going to be executed, which is just insane. But they didn't kind of bring that in any kind of good storytelling. It was just all a bit jumbled, I thought. So I was kind of a bit disappointed that it could have been a really good episode, but they kind of reduced it to this really bizarre, the second orgy that we've had in 7 episodes. I was just, how did these things get on TV? It's just mind-boggling.
Eve, very quickly, as an attorney, have you ever won a case saying, yeah, it's a rule, but some rules are meant to be broken?
I mean, there's an exception to everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. It's true.
Case closed. Homer Freezy wearing a radical Abyssinian kiosk shirt. What's new? What'd you think of this one?
Well, so Melissa and I watched it last night, and we thought that it was not the greatest moment for Star Trek. That perhaps there was some stereotyping going on, and that perhaps the person who wrote it or who revised it was not blonde. It's like a planet of blonde people. It I don't know. I mean, probably the episode shouldn't have happened, because just by going there, it was in violation of the Prime Directive. But it was an interesting romp, and it informs one of my not to do cosplay choices.
What if we really want you to do it?
Homer, who had an interesting romp in this episode?
That's a good question. I think there's a lot that was going on off screen, perhaps before Riker and Yar came back to the ship. Something may have happened. We don't know.
All right. Somebody that's no stranger to romps. Justin Weir, what's up? Did you love this episode? What'd you think?
Up until 20 minutes before we started recording, I didn't think I was going to make it tonight, but so usually I have a lot of notes, but I only wrote down a little bit. Orgy planet made for Riker. Like, that's who needs Risa? That's Riker's planet. Data, don't babble.
Yeah.
Melissa talking about the background actors. I'm here for it. I would love to get my start in acting on a show like that.
I'd be really nervous.
I need you to lay down and have a MO sesh with this chick. I'll do my best. And I'm trying to watch it as fast as I can. But the dude was doing a handstand to get around, like all nonchalant.
Yeah.
Overall, I like this episode. It's fun. It's, don't take it too seriously, but the good stuff is coming. We just got to get there slowly.
Let's not take that line any further. No, let's not. So Dr. Mohamed Noor is here to clean things up for us. What's up, Doctor? What's new?
Hey, doing well, thanks. This episode was fun. I won't repeat things other people have said. Actually, so interestingly, something that struck me about it, I'm not a sociologist or anything like that, but I thought it was curious or puzzling, this juxtaposition of this rigid authoritarian law with hedonism, which like you don't usually see it. Like here on our planet, when you see rigid authoritarian law, everybody's like, you can't do anything. But I think it's mostly because ours tends to come from more sort of puritanical like things. But there it was an interesting opposite of the usual. But it also had me wondering, how does it even work there? Because it seemed like nobody was doing anything except just making out all the time. Like people need food, shelter, and clothes. I guess they don't need much clothing there. Maybe the textile industry's kind of background. but who's like making the food? Who's building the buildings? Who's they have stuff, but it didn't seem like anybody was working ever. So this had me wondering what was
priority. It's not a priority on that planet.
Yeah, I mean, I figure at some point it would become one. Like it starts raining.
Saturday.
Maybe it was what? It was Saturday?
It was Saturday. Everybody's off.
Maybe. Exactly. That's completely different when you show up on Monday. Everybody's in the suits and working. anyway, I thought it was interesting. It was fun. It was interesting, but that was the piece that puzzled me a little bit. So that's it for me.
Good stuff, TJ. It's like the Chicago song, Saturday in the Park.
Yeah, and that was their work clothes. So imagine.
Depends on what your job is.
All right. Chris McGee is here as well. He's also going to try desperately to clean it up for us. What do you got for us?
Well, I might actually succeed. First of all, so many blonde wigs. Wow. I think this was our first major Prime Directive episode in this show. We've had kind of dabbled in it a little bit previously, unless you count Code of Honor. But unlike that episode, however, Picard actually violates the Prime Directive in this one. I think this is the first time first time he violates the Prime Directive on the show. So I've thought that was interesting. Also interesting was, I like the fact that Wesley kind of started to if you'll excuse the expression, grew a pair. And you're not involved in this decision, boy. I'm sorry, sir, but it seems like I am.
Yeah.
And that was kind of nice seeing him stand up for himself. This episode also kind of pushed the censorship boundaries, which is not the only time we'll see that in the show. If I remember correctly, in fact, later on this season, we'll see a different kind of pushing of the censorship boundaries. So stay tuned for that. And just because the IMDb score is low doesn't mean the episode can't be fun or entertaining. So I always keep that in mind. I didn't hear any non-appearance mentions this episode. Did anyone else catch any that I may have missed? Yeah, good. I'm glad I wasn't sleeping at the wheel there. So lastly, the phrase of the episode. There were a bunch of them that I liked. It was hard to pick a single one, but I think the one I'm going to go with is "I'm with Starfleet. We don't lie." Which
That's cute.
He got real serious for that moment too.
Yeah, he's taking his role seriously now. He's growing up.
Yeah, you can't handle the truth.
All right. Also, no stranger to courtroom dramas. Carrie Schwent is here. What's up, Carrie? What'd you think of this episode?
This one's a painful one, particularly the first third. It's just so cringeworthy after cringeworthy. But the limerick for this one, kind of the way I predicted when I started doing the limericks, that some of them were practically going to write themselves. So we'll get that part out of the way here. The Edo are happy and fun. To get somewhere, they always will run. Wesley chases a ball, but falls over a wall. And the duck almost loses her son. And yeah, Wesley was absolutely the single best part of a fairly painful episode. He was definitely growing up, especially at the end, like Chris was saying, very much standing up for himself. And if you looked close enough, his stunt double when he was doing the cartwheels clearly outweighed him by probably 50 pounds at least. Or was probably 100 soaking wet. But did have a favorite part of it was with the Data getting called out as a babbler. as a fellow babbler myself, I can absolutely relate. Picard asks him another question and he gives like a 1 or 2 word answer, and Picard just rolls his eyes. Okay, I need more. You can tell me more than that. Just don't run off at the mouth about it. Yeah, got a couple other things, but we'll save those for later. And yeah, this place definitely makes Rizzo look like Disney World. I mean, it's everywhere you look, there's something going on that kids should not see.
Denise, do you remember when they said to Tasha and he says, "Nice to see you again"? Didn't they kind of imply that something had already went down?
I don't think that something went down. Remember, they made a brief kind of reconnaissance, thing and scoped it out. And I'm sure that Riker and Tasha got back in the thing and went, I think this looks pretty good. What do you think? And
we're coming back.
And Riker goes, if you're down, I'm down. Okay, let's convince them. Let's go back and because Tasha goes back on the first thing he says, and they make love at the drop of a hat, and Tasha goes, any hat, it's like, what does that even mean? Any hat?
They weren't even wearing hats.
I mean, she says like Christy, and
what'd you say? Oh.
Yeah. So I blew that outfit on you, not until, and I put my unicorn head back on. We could have so it's like, they're definitely they must have just said, come on, man, we gotta get it on. We gotta need a break. But I don't think anything's gone down yet. You see the next time you see Tasha with her little cocktail.
Yeah.
And a little cocktail. I'm getting ready. Getting ready.
All right. Well, someone who's always ready, you guessed it, it's Jed Thompson. What's up, Jed? How are you? What'd you think of this episode?
I'm doing all right. We're staying as warm as we can here. Pretty cold today. This episode is we're in New England, where it is pretty darn cold.
You're getting a wind chill, a huge wind chill thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's why I'm actually. This is not for just show. So this episode is a classic in a few ways. It's going to be memorable. And is memorable. I have to remember it gets better. This was a rough one, and I have to ask: was this a sex sells episode or what? Mid-season. I mean, I know that there was some rewriting going on, and
at this point in time, the writers' room is a total mess. I mean, it is. We don't know things aren't ready, scripts aren't ready, things are, we don't have the next script. It is chaos at this point. Wow. We're all, I remember doing this episode, and when we get to this planet, and we see what this race looks like and what they're wearing and how they're running everywhere, I think all of us took a sigh and said, well, this is it. We're going to get canceled after this one. There's just no way. This is it. I mean, this is insane. What are we doing?
Yeah. And I mean, I did appreciate that everyone was sexualized this time around. At least it felt that way. But it was, this is memorable. It's a memorable episode.
And
I do have
it's so interesting, it's the 80s. These guys are free to do whatever they want. Jean has total control at this point. And, I can just imagine these guys, these older guys, because Jean had his team with him, that he brought, and I don't mean to be disparaging, but I'm just trying to, wrap my head around what was going on. Jean's got his guys from the original show, his his team. And can't you imagine them just saying, yeah, they're going to be these hot chicks and these good-looking guys, and they're going to be hardly dressed at all, and they're going to run
lots of oil,
just lots and lots. They're going to be making out because we can do it now, and they're just going to be, we're going to oil up some dude, and they're going to rub him. And, I can just imagine this conversation going on, behind closed doors, and they could do it. They could just pull up. I'm telling you, that I used to pinch myself going, does anyone know what we're filming? Like, this is not going to get on the air. But it was it was a syndicated television show made for syndication. So I just think the eyeballs on it were, they were just going, oh, whatever, those people over there in that little lot on Paramount, what are they? They're wearing spacesuits and they've got lizard heads, and we don't get what they're doing.
Gorn heads.
Yeah, I think they wrote these characters as all running so that it would make it difficult for Gene to catch them.
Very nice. Very nice. All right. Well, let's move forward all the way. Mohammed says Star Trek Baywatch. Totally. Exactly that. Somebody who's seen every episode of Baywatch, by the way, is Dr. Susan B. Gruner. What's up, Sue? What'd you think?
Oh man, my first thought was that the person who needed to go on that planet was Picard alone. Just send him down there for a day. And I agree with Eve, and that they really lost an opportunity to show such extremes. The dichotomy between such an open-minded group of people sexually to be so rigid when it comes to the slightest little thing like falling on some flowers that gets you the death penalty. No, I'll take Riza any day over that, where I won't be executed for breaking a glass or something like that. But I remember watching it when it came out and thinking it was kind of silly, but yet you know how I feel about it. I'm a feminist, and I thought it was totally sexualization of everybody. And but now I have to admit that I laughed a lot. I shook my head so many times. I think I sprained my neck. So many parts of it. But anyway, that's about it. What else? Yeah, that's all I have. Card should have gone.
I laughed a lot more this episode than I expected to. I felt like I was writing down funny lines in my notes nonstop. TJ Jackson-Bey is also here. He's the party Gorn. He knows how to live it up. Every party at his house, this kind of outfit is mandatory. What's up, TJ? How you been?
Nothing. Just ready to go party on Ito, I guess. First, shout out to Dr. Marie Segal, because her not being here for this episode means there is no justice.
Aww.
It's her favorite episode.
Oh.
So, this really, as soon as I turned this on, and I've seen it plenty of times, I immediately thought of the original series again. And, for anybody that hasn't seen it, your homework for this episode is to go back and watch the original series episode, The Apple, because there's a similar storyline. I think I just stole one of Homer's comments, but because he's seen the original series. After you get finished looking at the, scantily clad people, this story kind of becomes about, the Eden story. I mean, the planet's called Edo, but it's Eden. It's a reference to Eden. And it has this protective God that, is looking over this kind of garden-like, environment. And my goodness, are they becoming, fruitful and many. And that is what seems to be their job. That's, what they do. That's straight out of Genesis. And, there's also, kind of this idea of, an angry God, is kind of what I saw that, uses his power to, protect, but also, to threaten. And it's the same debate from the Apple is like, okay, does us being here ruin that? Is that a good thing? Is it bad? And it leaves that question open, just like they did in the Apple. But so now that I'm done with the serious part, my favorite line in this episode was the young lady that says to Wesley, "I want to do something too with you."
And he says, "Oh no, I'll let you finish that."
Wesley's face was priceless.
Yeah, didn't he say, "Oh, there's certain games that I don't play.
That I don't know how to play.
I'm not allowed to play yet."
And so we're getting to know Will Riker, but if you already know him, then nothing in this episode is a surprise to you. Why he wanted to take an away team to this planet and go back. So that was fun. I thought it was also interesting that this alien thing, after it interfaced with Data said that it knew everything that he knew. So that means that, any security information he has in the Federation knows that. That thing could have taken over the Enterprise if it wanted, because it knows Data's, all of Data's stuff. And I think it's interesting that I think it would be interesting if we ever go back and revisit that thing that has all of Data's knowledge. Interesting. I had a comment to follow up Mohammed's hedonism reference, but I forgot it, so it'll be in Things Left Unsaid.
Nice. Things forgot to be said. All right, cool. So stick around for that. All right, we've got Mai live in Tokyo. What's up, Mai? Wearing a radical sweater, hooded sweater from Walking Art made by Melissa.
There you go. Yeah, interesting episode. I mean, I suppose I could talk about how the different expressions of power by someone with a fiduciary responsibility are expressed. Captain for crew, mother for child, advanced being for evolving species. But I'm not going to go there. I want to ask a question of Denise. Actually, it's a long-winded preamble. So give me a second to get this out. I was watching an episode of Barney Miller from season 4 during a rewatch of that series this week. And the dialogue had changed by that series to be none of the homophobic, transphobic, racial comments that were so popular in the 70s and a lot of the shows then. But it looked at the characters, their personalities, their individual situations, the interaction between them. And it struck me that not only had the characters evolved, but the writers had evolved. And as a complete layperson to this, I mean, I see a character as being really three things: the actor, the script, and the direction, maybe. But this episode was the second commissioned episode. So they were coming off the tails of the first one, and it took them a lot of rewrites to get there, which is why it was the 8th one that was filmed. But it seems that the writers were, because of that timing, were more out of touch with who the characters were to be than in the past few episodes we've seen. The story seemed to take center stage. Who the characters were seemed less important than them filling the roles the story called for. A man, a woman, a young boy, an alien who's different from humans. There was no real sense of Riker or Tasha or Wesley or Worf. So I wanted to ask you your thoughts on this, and if in fact this writer evolution, exclusive of direction, is a real thing, how might this have impacted your role on TNG? And do you feel there were any real character-driven episodes while you were initially there? And then finally, did the writer evolution impact how the character of your daughter was done?
Wow. I will say you targeted exactly what motivated me throughout this entire process of being involved with this show. The writing was, again, so all over the place during that first season. And I was very concerned that that we would just be kind of a sort of prop. I was sort of a prop on the bridge, and until they got, I think, Michael Piller in there, and things started to change, and they got a grasp. The writers got the reins and could see who these people are, and begin to write in their voice. Not get us to say their lines, but to see who, how we were embodying these characters, and then begin to tailor that, begin to write for that. That's the kind of symbiotic relationship that, when you're doing a TV series for a number of seasons, begins to happen when you have a solid writer's room, that you revisit season after season. They begin to understand who this character is. They're open to your ideas, your questions, and it becomes it meshes. It begins to mesh. You're not seeing any of that right now. You're seeing us be thrown into an environment that is, we are quickly having to figure out and to define who these people are without the aid of consistency from the writers. We have a new director each week, as television does, but we don't really have we're just kind of making it up as we go at this point. And you're watching that happen. You try this, and maybe this is how she would react. Or, this is, what is my relationship with Geordie? What is my relationship with Wesley? Trying to get really specific at this point, but it's not there. We don't have it yet. And we don't have a support of a real unifying voice. Though Gene is there, he's there and he's not there at the same time. He's there because this is his baby. This is his creation. So he's handpicking. He's the final say with everything. But the voices are discordant at this point. The writers he's getting are not in sync with him. He's being asked to rewrite, and he's not. And it's not really happening. So it's a lot of trying to work our way through a bit of a mess at this point. Does that make sense? But you're so astute with your comments about writing and how does that how does it evolve with each other, and this was the key to answer your question, how it would have affected my relationship. It was all about that. Had there been, some strong anchors in that writing room and voices that I could depend on, and that were writing for these characters very specifically, it totally would have changed. I would have, I'm sure, stayed on the show. But it was really becoming, again, we did 26 episodes a season. That's a lot of episodes that go by where you're simply just standing there. I was just standing there. I even made a joke to them. You should mock up my legs. You should do just my legs and put them on the horseshoe on the bridge. Stay down here, with Troy and Riker and Picard, because I have no dialogue. It'll look like I'm standing there. And they go, "Oh, Denise." I said, no, I'm serious. Just make my legs and I can go home and I'll see you tomorrow. So it was just, what is it about? It's always about the writing to me.
Right. Thank you. But yeah, I suspected that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
She's got legs.
Those had yeah, exactly. You spread whatever.
Yeah.
That was like in the previous episode, or the one before, they had one of the actors, they released him early. I don't remember exactly which one it was. And then it turned out that they needed a shot from his back for like one shot. So they just put like a chair and a wig to they could have done what they did, what you were suggesting, Denise. They could have done it and they were just playing dumb, but they'd done it before.
Engineers sing.
Yeah. Matt Boardman is also here. He's never been substituted by a chair and a wig. Only the real thing. What's up, Matt?
I wish that weren't true. It's funny speaking. I lost my voice as well. But speaking of the writing, I thought it was interesting to learn that the writer for this episode actually is listed under a pseudonym because he wasn't happy with how the episode turned out.
Oh, is this Worley?
Is that Worley?
Yeah, I think so.
Worley Thorn?
Let's see. Yeah. So, and his original concept for this episode was actually very interesting. No, it was John D.F. Black was the writer, and he used the pseudonym of Ralph Willis. So it was actually a lot more serious than what this episode ended up being. But I laughed as I was watching it again. I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is just silly. It's just silly." It's like I get that maybe they're trying to show that the Edo are very childlike, but like I was like, maybe it was just a little too much for me in this one. This is one when I do my rewatches, I always kind of skip over because I'm like, I've seen it enough times. I don't need to, where they're massaging the guy. I call that the Wendy Peppercorn scene because it's lotiony and oily. I can't take it anymore, But I did, though, as I kind of like pulled myself out of the silliness, I did kind of like that it's a little bit of an examination of the laws that we have in our society. And we get to me, it was a really great Picard line, one of many, where he says there can be no justice so long as laws are absolute. Even life itself is an exercise in exemptions. And I just thought that that was great because as I get older, I look back at my life and when I was a teenager and when I was in my early 20s, things were very, in some ways, black and white to me. But as I've gone on and I've had these unfortunate life experiences and I've observed them in other people, I realize that life is very gray. And as a result, so is the situation that we found in this episode that you had these laws that are absolute, but really should this be an absolute in this case where someone who didn't know the rules, I like the guy, he said, ignorance of the law is not an excuse. And it's like, well, but the counterpoint to that is if you don't know that you're breaking the law, should you be punished to it? So I thought that was great.
All right. Good stuff. Thanks, Matt. Also great sweatshirt on you. Great hoodie. Any final thoughts, Cirroc and Denise? James L. Conway said that there was the rumor that possibly Picard might have been killed off if he didn't do well, according to the fans, or get good response. And all I could picture at that moment was First Officer Tasha Yar. I don't know if that was in the cards, but everybody else, kind of seemed to be doing their thing. But any final thoughts?
Did you just say in the Picards?
Oh, very good. I like that.
Good one.
In the Picards. Yes.
Very good.
No, I thought that if Worf got his way on that planet, none of the women are going to be running. I think he can slow them down.
How do you mean?
I'm just saying. I also thought Data says knock you out.
All right.
I had that thought in my head. Little Data says knock you out. And then the other thing is, I did think a little bit that they missed an opportunity to talk about non-heterosexual relationships in this moment, because they did have the women matched up with the men and vice versa. And I felt like there could have been some more variety there, and they didn't choose that for a show that's always progressive and always thinking ahead. I thought that was one little detail that they kind of missed the opportunity on. But yeah, I think everything else has pretty much been said. There's not much more. It's all pretty much out there to bear in this episode. So
all right.
So it's all hanging out now.
There it is. It's all out in the open.
It's all out now. Yeah.
It's so interesting, you know. It's so glaring in your face, the heterosexual only couplings, watching it from this point now. I thought the same thing, and I realized that then in 86, 87, shooting it, they couldn't go there yet. They didn't go there yet. I read a script that was promised to be shot that season, involving two male ensigns that were lovers, and they nixed it at the last moment. They just, I don't know if Gene and his gang were just couldn't go there yet. It's interesting because we're learning some key things. We're learning that the death penalty has been eliminated. That man, we once thought that was a good idea, and we became smarter than that and became more humane. We don't kill animals for food anymore, at that. So we're getting, they're setting these little nuggets in that I had give you some understanding of and hope for the future, that this is where we're progressing. And Star Trek is so, I forget what the little nuggets are that are dropped in through these shows and what they say about it.
Me too.
So that was nice to kind of hear that and hear the the kind of explanation going between them, that you're obviously not as progressive as we are. You're still killing your people. It was just such an absolute defining line they had, but it's interesting because it kept them without crime. So it's a real, kind of philosophical debate going on that they're when you can clear the running oily bodies and the little outfits, you sometimes can hear these little pieces of debate and philosophy and
totally.
The arguments of justice and the prime directive, really talking about that in a way that even that has to be what is really the meaning. How is that applied, not absolute?
Mm-hmm.
So that was what I was reminded of watching this, and I laughed my ass off. I just laughed. I laughed while I was shooting it. I laughed while I watched it. I laughed when I see cosplay. If anyone comes as a Nito, I start chasing them around the ship. I can't get enough of it. It's hysterical.
All right. Great stuff. As soon as you said that, I want to create a poll, but it's going to take too long to type. As soon as you said that, I thought, who among us is the most likely to cosplay one of these people at a Star Trek convention?
I have
that'll cost
right
you.
here.
Yeah.
Just let me know. You want to see it,
I
guys.
would do it.
I got a CVS receipt that should be covered. It should be.
I can wrap it all
wraps
up in
around
here.
like 50 times.
I'll be wearing
much
this
fabric.
on the ship
Yes.
and Riza.
Yes.
This is my outfit for Riza.
There you go.
Melissa, you should design
Melissa.
a T-shirt with it on.
Yeah, Melissa's
A
got a
T-shirt with a
doily.
design on it.
I have two.
Right.
There you
Oh,
go.
there you go.
Wow.
All right, everybody, let's get out of here before more damage is done. Thank you to Melissa, Eve, Sue, Mohammed, Justin, Homer, Jed, Carrie, Chris, Mai, Partygorn, TJ, and Matt. For myself, Denise, Cirroc, and Mr. Aaron Eisenberg, and whoever the glue person was that kept all those clothing pieces on.
Oh, dear.
Thank you all, and we'll see you next time. Always remember the 7th rule.